Okay, we're on to chapter 3, Kenneth the Menneth. Reminding you, as I will every chapter, that Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Amazon, Spotify podcast, they're all available. The book is available on all of those different websites. Kenneth the Menneth, Adolescence, Rotten Ronnie, The Redhead, and Other Stories. I have much to be embarrassed about, and it is only my conviction that the Christian values provide good societies spoiled only by power, self-righteousness, greed that take away from it. I certainly don't plan my life the way it turned out, even though I had a path that I tried to follow. I hope to show you that even without faith, you can live a good life by following someone who preached pure goodness, forgiveness, love, and service. The good news is that you have also not been poisoned by hateful doctrine. Thomas Jefferson wrote a Bible that he called the Philosophy of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, where he included only the moral preachments of Jesus Christ. Society living as Christ would want us to can only be good for all of us. Some people bring talent to the world inheritably through the grace of God. Those lucky ones often gain mentoring to help them along life's journey. While I am dazzling handsome with delusional tendencies, I had no one willing to mentor me in my youth. Only when I tried to behave as I was guided to behave by JC did I become a better person. JC is my mentor. I am by nature self-centered, curious, mischievous, and adventurous. These traits guide me into incidences good and bad. I might have taken the wrong path sometimes, but having good parents, a stable community where we lived, having a good wife, children, grandchildren, and trying to be a good person has made a great deal of difference to me. I suggest that you pick the best partner you can based upon the traits that you lack, with which, by your partner's gifts, you are made stronger. If you're ugly, marry a blind one. They say opposites attract. My wife is kind, warm, generous, loving, wise, intelligent, and sweet. I, on the other hand, am, well, not. I have lived this long because my wife has taken good care of me. When the time comes, I will probably be cremated. My ashes might be divided up into urns for my wife and my 2 wonderful children, or spread out in my favorite places. The way things are going lately, I might just be troweled under some sod with any family Gallagher so my heirs won't have to pay for the burial. This could happen if I keep daffodilling off my wife. And then there was Ken and Rotten Ronnie, the redhead. By the time I was 5, I had broken Mr. Watson's window, tore the washing off the clothes of a neighborhood witch, as well as I fed a 3-year-old friend dog feces on a popsicle stick. I stood by as a dog killed a baby robin, almost drowned in Mr. Watson's pond, and almost drowned at the lake. If God wanted to take me then, he would have had no room in heaven for the likes of me. If anyone needed a moral compass, it was me. My mother thought that I could do no wrong, as she thought that her Kenny would eventually be headed for sainthood. I would say that my quest for sainthood was off to a shaky start. Regarding the baby robin, I still see its eyes of terror in my mind. I determined soon after witnessing that awful experience that I wouldn't just stand by in frozen fear. I would do what I could to help save that little bird. I have put myself in harm's way at times in my life because I determined to be a helper and try to stop what isn't right. It is instinct to me because that is how I evolved. Serving others is a way of life. It doesn't have to be your entire purpose, but it must be at least part of what you do. This is what I would encourage everyone to do in order to make the world a better place. Some might think, why do I want to make the world a better place? Why shouldn't I just make my own life better? You can find Christian evangelists that state that God will take care of the poor. You just have to take care of yourself. Do you believe that? That's your choice, buddy, but that's not what you'll get out of this book. Any of the trouble that I got into as a child was attributed to my friend who was a year older than me and was in kindergarten. My mother considered him to be the nemesis of my bad behavior. Rotten Ronnie, the redhead, was a neighbor, and I could do anything, I would do anything, to make him laugh. Sadly, he only laughed when we were getting into trouble. Most people only called Rotten Ronnie the redhead by his first name, Rotten. One day, Rotten had his wagon with a rope tied to my father's front gate post. With continuous yanks, he was loosening the post in the ground when my father saw him. Now, Rotten, why would you do such a thing? Mr. Gallagher, I just hate myself when I do things like this. I certainly wasn't any better than Rotten, but he was older, and he took all the blame, and it worked out well for a little chrysanthemum like me. My mother wasn't a religious person, but believed that I needed discipline and values, which I was proving to lack. My father had his faith, but at 40, he felt that his role was as a breadwinner and that the responsibility of raising children was my mother's. In my early childhood, my father had little to do with me. It was common practice in those days to have the mother stay at home and raise the kids while the father was the breadwinner. Going to catechism with my two sisters was our first introduction to the Christian way of life. As a Catholic, reflection and guilt were heavily emphasized. As I grew through adolescence, I saw that the difference between me and my Protestant friends, as a Catholic, I could do sinful things as long as I went to confession. I had to wait until I was 7 before I could receive the act of reconciliation and be forgiven for my sins from the earlier days. My Protestant friends, on the other hand, didn't receive the same training and didn't experience guilt like I did. I believe that their mantra was that they could do anything that they wanted without guilt as long as they didn't enjoy it. It is odd to me that the books in any religion are serious with consequence. Christianity is filled with so much praise to the Lord that you'd think that the Lord God had a lack of self-esteem. Who needs everyone to praise them? Anyways, the Lord does. He needs to be praised. Who needs to be loved by everyone and condemns to eternal damnation anyone who thinks differently? It's a little creepy, I'd say. So why follow Christ? The reason I thought that anyone should learn about living a Christian life is because Christ's message is pure goodness. My values were molded by the message of Christ. The hierarchies in church leadership in various groups attempt to guide us to a certain way of life. Most people have some faith, and faith is what gives us hope. I can't imagine having no faith, but for the purposes of this book, it isn't important. What is important is behavior in our society. Yuval Noah Harari wrote a book, Sapiens. He would be considered a purely bona fide atheist, but I believe that he and his followers would benefit by behaving as Christians, even if they maintained atheism throughout their lives. After all, if all we had to think of is ourselves, wouldn't greed and self-centeredness be the norm for the people in the world? Wouldn't the world be a better place if we cared for each other instead? Because I am Catholic, I was able to go to confession and tell my sins to a priest who would absolve me of my indiscretions. Alternatively, I could have gone to a psychologist or a psychiatrist and paid for the assurance that what I did was wrong but forgivable. I calculated that by going to confession instead of going to a psychiatrist from the time I was 8 until I was 75 has saved me $483,254.84, roughly. I know a dyslexic atheist who I've consulted with from time to time for this input into what I was writing, and he has been a big help. Sadly, he doesn't believe in dog. Acceptance and forgiveness is an important part of living with Christ, but my friends have similar values without being involved with organized religion. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Parents, what good are they? For me, having two parents gave me two perspectives to compare. I think that good parents are very important, without which you have to seek someone you respect as a mentor. Both my parents were second-generation North Americans. My mother and father were born in European descent. My father, James, was an easygoing Irish gentleman who made his living with his hands on the railroad. He was a wonderful man and a loyal husband. We were brought up in a lower middle class neighborhood. A confession he gave to me as my father was nearing the end of his life confirmed that overall he was a good man. An important thing for my dad was he was determined that his family would never be hungry. The idea of going to bed hungry was unimaginable for me and my sisters, but for my father, who was raised during the 1930 Depression, it was reality. My father-in-law of Polish descent was conscripted into the Russian army involuntarily. At times, he would eat dog to survive. Starvation has to be one of the most painful ways to die. The Irish famine stood out for me as an unnecessary killing by colonizers that chose to look the other way. Those that followed the Adam Smith's philosophy from his writings on the Wealth of Nations, written in 1776, encouraged economic conditions to ebb and flow, even if it brought hardship to some or all the population. You just have to let the economy work through the highs and lows. I don't know for sure if this laissez-faire philosophy contributed to how England dealt with the famine, but with the government having control of Ireland, they certainly didn't do enough to stave off the starvation. For example, the evangelical Sir Charles Trevelyan, in charge of the relief effort in Ireland during the famine, was quoted as saying, "The judgment of God sent the calamity to teach the Irish a lesson. It's peonies like this that cost thousands of Irish children their lives. Forgive me, Father, for calling him a peonies. He was a tulip peonies. God forgive him." Changing the crops up to peas, turnips, beets, carrots, legumes, etc., plus developing nesting sites for pigeons for protein, and opening up the ocean waters to the Irish would have limited the famine to 1 year, in my opinion. And that's it for that chapter. There we go.